Hello guys and welcome to my new video. This is going to be a restoration druid guide for patch 7.2. I made a previous resto druid video for patch 7.15, but I decided to do one for the latest content, basically of how legendaries have changed and some of the stat priority has is different. There's a lot more emphasis towards mastery. So I'm hoping that this is going to be like a go-to video for resto druid, new resto druid guys who wants to learn more about restos, how to play, what kind of talents to use, stat priority, gameplay tips, and things like that. So let's just start. For this section is going to be talents and stat priority, because your stat priority is going to be is linked with the talents that you're currently using, and I'll show you why. So I'm going to start with raid environment. So this is anything from above 5 man. So in a raid environment, there's actually a default, like a base talent build that a lot of new druids will use, and is probably going to be one of the best starting builds for new resto druid guys. So this involves Scenario Ward, Placer Beast, Guardian Affinity, Typhoon, Cultivation, Spring Blossoms, and Flourish. So with this build, you can do about 90% of 9-hold without worrying to have to lose too much HPS or knowing that you're not optimized enough. This talent build will work for about majority of resto druids out there. You won't have to change anything. And with this build, what kind of stats do I need to start stacking, or what do I need to do? The best advice I can give you is to have a balanced stat sheet. So what I mean by that is don't stack too much of one stat, because that's going to kind of outweigh the other stats. And what I mean by this, try and keep between 20 to 25% of haste. That's kind of the sweet spot that I found, because if you have more than that, you're gonna start running out of mana because you're gonna be casting much more spells. That's how it actually goes. You want to have around the same percentage in crit. Anything above 20% is acceptable. The same thing goes with mastery. You want to have about around 20%. Versatility, you want to have 5% and up. So what do I mean if you start stacking stats? If you have about 30% crit, your versatility, and you have no versatility, your versatility is going to become better than crit. You want to keep a balance, and vice versa. If you have too much versatility, your crit is going to become better than versatility. The good thing about restoration druids, and especially in raid environment, is that most stats are good for you. You don't really need to pass up on any items, any loot, any leather loot, because you can actually utilize nearly all of those items. The thing with your talent build, because the cookie cutter build that I included here, which is using Spring Blossoms, that when you start using Spring Blossoms, or if you start using Germination, which is on the same talent tier, mastery becomes much better because of how mastery works. Mastery increases your healing for every hot on the target. With Spring Blossoms, there'll be 3 targets affected with an additional hot, therefore increasing your healing. Therefore, the more mastery you have, the more healing you're going to do on those targets with those additional hots. The same way Germination works as well. Germination gives you an additional rejuvenation, so you have 2 rejuvenations to put. You put 2 rejuvenations on a target, your mastery is going to heal that target more because you have 2 additional hots. So the thing is, the minute you start using Spring Blossoms and Germination, your mastery is going to become very, very good. It's on a lot of the cases, if you start using Germination for fights, your mastery is going to be better than Intellect. So if you start using those talents, there is a very good option of actually stacking mastery without losing too much other stats, but you can have anything between 20 to 25% of mastery, and you will see great results in healing. This works especially well when you're not under healing content. If you have too many healers, nothing's going to help you. Druids are going to be sniped. They are the best sniping target by anyone, like Holy Priest, this priest, and things like that. So you can't really judge this build if you're over healing. If you pick Inner Peace, which is also a valid option for fights where you can see that you're going to have multiple tranquilities, the minute you start using Innervate, you should not stack mastery. You should move away from it. Actually, mastery becomes probably the least optimal stat for you to have when you're speccing in inner peace. So if you pick inner peace, change your gear, get more crit, get more haste, get more versatility. You want to have around, I would say, 10 to 15% max mastery. You don't want to have anything above 15% in mastery when you pick inner peace. And this is basically the default talents and stats for raid content. Now let's go to 5-man content. So in 5-man content, it's a little bit simpler. First of all, the talents are a lot more, they're not really set in stone. You can change a lot of things around. I personally go with abundance, especially for weeks with grievous and things like that, where I want big regrowth crits. You can pick any of these. Scenario Warrior, Prosperity, all of these talents actually work. Displacer Beast, you kind of have to use. Guardian Affinity or Balanced Affinity or Feral Affinity if you want to do DPS, these are completely viable. You can choose Guardian Affinity if you feel that you're dying too much. Then you have Typhoon, which is probably one of the best Crown Control CC spells for specific weeks. Cultivation, you can actually change to 3 if you want. I feel the Cultivation works really well. Then you probably have to go with Germination. Germination is the only tier 19 talent that's probably viable. You have to go Germination. And then in the tier 100, you can either choose Stoneback or Flourish. If your tank is dying or you feel that the Pug is going to be not so great, you can go for Stoneback. Otherwise, go for Flourish with the extended HOTS. It works really great. So the stat priority for 5-mans is a bit different than raids. The basic thing that I can tell you is stack haste and mastery. Now those two stats are the best in 5-man. Mastery is actually better than intellect in 5-mans because of how many HOTS you can have on each target. Because you're running Germination, you have 2 rejuvenations on each target. So you have 5 people in your group. All of those 5 people should have 2 rejuvenations on them at all time. The tank should have Life Bloom, and you should wild growth as much as possible with the 2 set. Therefore, there's multiple HOTS running on everyone. Mastery is just through the roof. It increases your healing so crazy. It's better than intellect. Stack as much mastery. But the point is, you can stack as much mastery. It's not going to help if your heals are really slow, if your HOTS don't take as much as they should. So you should get as much haste as you feel comfortable with. Like I said, anything between 20 to 25% works here as well. Because slow heals is what basically kills people most of the time, and they'll blame you for that. So you need to be comfortable with the amount of haste you have, and then basically stack as much mastery, because mastery here is basically as good as intellect. And this is in 5-man scenarios. If you want to know what's the best stat for you, the only way to actually know is to use these 2 tools that are available for Restoration Druids: Torty's Twigget spreadsheet and Leaf's Resto Druid stat weight week aura, which gives you best statistics per boss fight. So depending on your spell usage, it'll take into account how many rejuvenations, what kind of talents you're using, and it'll give you the next best stat to use. So like I said, for fights where you Spring Blossom and Germination, the weak aura will tell you probably that Mastery is the best to stack. But it's good to know, so I do recommend these 2 tools because they are really great. And the next thing we should cover is Legendaries. So there's few things that change in 7.2 concerning Resto Druid Legendaries. I would be as bold to say that there are 2 Biz Legendaries that can be used for nearly every fight in Nighthold, and the number 1 would be the legendary Trinket. So Velen's Trinket is very good, considering how hard it is to get a decent Trinket that stat sticks at the best. This Trinket is by far the best legendary for Resto Druids, and it's probably by far legendary for other healers as well. And I would say that the second best legendary after the changes in 7.2 for Resto Druids will be the Shoulders. So the Amantul's Wisdom, because of how it extends your main spell, Rejuvenation. With this Shoulders, you can actually blanket the raid with blanket the whole of raid with Rejuvenations, because it'll extend the duration of Rejuvenation once the target is full HP. So this works if you're over healing content, if you're under healing content. It basically works in 90% of scenarios. And this is for raid. This is of course for a raid scenario, but the same goes actually for 5-man. I would go as far as saying that Trinket is still the best and Shoulders are still the best. But if you are going to really high Mythic Plus content where you can actually get one-shotted, because once you go above 15, there's some mechanics that can actually one-shot you. And I guess the neck Predas becomes one of the best as well. So I would swap out most likely the Trinket, because I feel the Shoulders are just so good, for the neck, because the neck will give you a shield. The shield can be around 1 million based on your HP. The shield can actually increase. If you have a weak order that tells you when the shield is about to refresh, you can go into bear form. Bear form gives you about 4 million HP or something like that. And then that shield will scale off that the bear HP. And it'll be like 2 million or something. So for 5-man, I would say neck is really good. It's between the 3 legendaries, between the neck, it's between the Trinket, and it's between the Shoulders. Those are the ones that you really want to get, and you can pick and switch around based on that. So these are some of the best legendaries for Resto Druids in patch 7.2. Now we can actually cover the gameplay mechanics of a Restoration Druid. So this is a very basic overview of what you should do as a healing druid in raids. You have 2 main cooldowns, which is Essence of Ganeer and Flourish. They're 1.5 minute and 1 minute cooldown themselves. They don't really line up, but for a fight where there's a lot of damage incoming, it is the best to use them together. So you want to use Flourish and Essence of Ganeer together. The best combo is to actually blanket your raid with Rejuvenations, cast Wild Growth, then cast Flourish, because Flourish will extend the duration of the Wild Growth hot, and then cast Essence of Ganeer. While casting Essence of Ganeer, it increases the hot healing. This actually becomes as good as a mini Tranquility. Don't underestimate Essence of Ganeer, because it is actually a ridiculous amount of healing. So use it wisely. Check the fight that you're doing. Check if there's a big damage in the next couple of minutes. If in the next minute, you don't want to hold it too long. You don't want to waste. You want to have as many casts without waiting too long. So you really need to judge yourself. In Scorpion, use it in the first 10 seconds, because there's damage always incoming. And Essence of Ganeer and Flourish, use them together and it worked really well. Innervate, I get this question a lot as well. Use it at 90% mana for a lot of the fights. So basically, you want to get as many innervates as possible, but you don't want to waste it when there's no damage incoming. So you have to judge it for yourself. But the best thing the most optimal thing is to use when you spend around 10% of your mana. So you're nearly full mana. You want to cast Innervate. There's damage incoming, and basically after that 10 seconds, you will have full mana back because of the passive regen that every healer has. So, and then this will ensure that you'll get at least 2 Innervates per fight in Nighthold. You might get 3 in some other encounters. You want to optimize your Innervates, because Resto Druids are one of the most mana hungry healers in the game. So this is really important. Use your Innervate wisely. And I guess the only other thing is spell uptimes. This is what Resto Druid is all about. You have multiple spells that need to have as close as 100% uptime as possible. So things like Life Bloom, make sure that the tank has it all the time, because Life Bloom also procs clear casting. Then you want to make sure that your Efflorescence is going to be up and around the melee at 100% of the time. So this is actually really important, especially if you use Spring Blossom, because this buffs Efflorescence, and Spring Blossom and Efflorescence actually gives like a hot around the people it heals. Make sure it's not wasted. It is super mana efficient heal. You just need to make sure the initial mana cost is quite big, so you might think that it's not worth it, but it lasts for 30 seconds. It is huge. It is really efficient. Make sure you don't waste it. It's really important. Then you have Scenario Ward, which you most likely will have to pick for raid scenarios. It's the best build for raids. Make sure you cast it on tank on cooldown. Always have a weak aura setup. Have a weak aura setup for these 3 spells, and make sure they're as close as 100%. Every time I check logs for other Resto Druids, this is the #1 problem: spell uptimes, which can account for, I don't know, from anything from 5 to 10% of healing if you don't use it correctly. And I guess you also have a big raid cooldown Tranquility. but it's not worth talking about it because it is going to be determined by your raid leader. You can't tell your raid leader that if you are spec'd into Inner Peace, which reduces Tranquility to 2 minutes, that you should get to use Tranquility first at the big raid damage cooldown, because you'll get to use it much more times because of Inner Peace. That is the #1 argument that you can have to be the #1 guy to use your raid cooldown. And this is basically an overview of Resto Druid gameplay healing. So that is the end of the guide. Hopefully you learned something. Hopefully it was a useful video. Now it ended up being quite long. If you're a new Resto Druid, hopefully you have a better idea of what build to go, what stats to stack, what spells to use, and what are the best situations to use them in. If you liked the video, please like the video. If you enjoy my content, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. I release Resto Druid guides, I release healing guides for World of Warcraft, and thank you for watching this video, guys.